So I'm here with Tiffanee Cook from 12 Rounds Fitness. And Tiff, I reached out to you last week to say that I'm struggling a bit in isolation. I've hit week 6. Motivation has been lacking. I've done pretty much no exercise. Somehow managed to injure a knee skipping the other day, of all things. And what I've seen, I guess, is sitting at a desk all day, not moving, outside of going to the toilet or going to the fridge to get alcohol or food or chocolate, has not been great. My wife and I hitting the low light in our lives the other day by stealing 2 of my 18-month-old chocolates to eat because we were out of chocolate. It's probably not helping. I've noticed I'm starting to get stiffness in between the shoulder blades, a little bit of ache in the lower back. My knees are starting to hurt when I squat down to do things with my son. My right elbow and right wrist are starting to play up from being at the computer much more than I normally am. I'm unmotivated, getting a little irritable and cranky, especially with an 18-month-old who wants all my attention. And my concentration throughout the day, especially once I hit about that 2-3 o'clock, is really starting to be an issue. So we talked about, as a fitness professional, things that people can do to actually address these issues. Do you want to take us through a little bit about who you are?
Oh, well, I used to work like yourself back in the day in the corporate world. Fell into that job and ran the rat race for quite a few years. And then I stumbled into a gym and said yes to a 12-week boxing challenge on a bit of a whim one day. So went through the process of doing this 12-week boxing challenge. It was absolutely incredible. And I come out the other side of it with a really unexpected revelations, So I looked back and realised that all these changes that I'd made in life for those 12 weeks had a massive impact on things outside of there. So my work, my relationships, my personality, obviously my health, my mental fitness and my thinking was all very different. So got obsessive and did a few more of those over the next couple of years, and it really just snowballed. I got more and more intrigued by how our physiology and our psychology and our mental and emotional health all links as one, and one affects the other. And basically my friends at the time sort of kept nudging at me to train them, so got my qualifications and here we are today.
And your last bout was quite a successful one?
Yes. Last year I got back in the ring. I'd had a few years off after becoming a PT, off competitive boxing, but last year jumped back in the ring and we had 3 fights and I won a featherweight Victorian title, state title, so that was really exciting.
Excellent. And we've talked a bit over the last couple of weeks and you're actually doing some work for Ambulance Victoria at the moment?
Yes. So Ambulance Victoria reached out to me at the beginning of this COVID-19 lockdown period, and they have obviously a very high focus on the mental and physical health of their ambulance employees and everyone across the entire paramedic network. So they wanted to offer an online wellness coach to look after that side of things for them. So I've been doing for them live stream Zoom training every day. I've also got some yoga and Pilates instructors in to sort of balance out my crazy. But also within that we do what I call a Feel Good Friday, which my first idea around that was just a social get together where we come on and have a chat and have a wine or a cup of tea together and talk about stuff. But that quickly snowballed into now I get some really high quality guest speakers. So I get a range of people that talk about aspects of self-care, and what I've found is it's giving people a space to open up and talk, and we're all isolated, we're all sort of going through the motions and stuck in our own head and probably focused on all the negative out there and focused on all the stuff that, that we can't control, and to be able to sit down and just open up and realise that we're all in the same boat at the moment, and getting a feel for how other people are dealing with things is really, really important.
So Tiff, one of the things I've noticed is I'm at home, I'm not going to work, I'm at my desk all day. Someone actually pointed out to me, one of the reasons I'm probably feeling a bit frustrated is if I'm in the office, I don't sit at my desk all day. I actually move around a lot, I talk to my colleagues, I have internal meetings, I go and talk to my team. Now I'm at my desk, And if I'm not at my desk, I'm probably going to the bathroom, or I'm going the 3 metres to the fridge to get something that's probably not healthy to eat, to come back and eat that while I work, because I'm bored. And I'm eating more because I'm bored, and because I'm at home, and because I'm trying to, I don't know, comfort eat is probably the term. Also, in an industry like insurance, where we have been known to have 1 or 2 lunches with alcohol, I have noticed that 2 o'clock sometimes becomes an acceptable time for me to crack a drink and start drinking. And overall, I'd say I'm drinking a fair bit more. What are the? Is it something about structure? What happens to us when we're at home? We're not using our normal routine.
Absolutely, and I think this applies to a lot of the people in the demographic that I service here in the 12-round environment. So we look at people. There's always been online coaching out there. There's always been the option if you want to train at home. There's stuff on. All you have to do is Google. But people have really gone into turmoil about this, because when you think about it, we're all made up of a whole different range of people, and the people that are coming inside the doors here are coming in because all they need to do is get here. The hard work is getting here, right? And when you get here, that is the cue that starts a cascade of events, which then you don't have to think about, that just happens. So they take a cue, they get there, the cue is walk through the door at the gym, I'm in the gym, and then the behaviour takes care of itself. They don't have to think anymore, they don't have to use willpower anymore, because there is a habit formed and a routine, and that takes over. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Well, I know you spoke to me too a while ago about how our work is often a cue for our exercise.
Yes.
I'm going to go for a swim before work. I'm going to go for a run at lunch. I'm going to hit the gym after work. So how do those cues get impacted at a point like this?
Well, I think you've got like bookends to your day. So sometimes the best way to how are you going to sit down and start your work effectively and the way that you normally do if you're rolling out of bed with your PJs on and all you're doing is rolling into the office chair or your lounge chair with a cushion on you, with a laptop on your bench. When, your prior routine might have been get up, 6 a.m, go to the gym, come home, shower, and then again, the routine. So
looking at this, I know one of your favourite quotes from Mike Tyson is, everyone has a plan until they get punched in the mouth. How do you think that applies to what's going on at the moment with people having to go, work from home or being out of work?
Yeah, I think that everyone's taken it really personally. I think that we're all addicted to control. I know the hardest thing for me was when it happened to me, there was nothing I could control. So it was really good for me. It was really good. If you can try and gain or use a level of self-awareness throughout this, I think that people are going to come out of this so much stronger. So one of the first things I realised was the rest of my life, adversity is my friend. When I face adversity, I fly. Something will happen after that and I'll be like, well, thank God that happened. I'm going to end up better off. And I knew that and I said it at the time, but what I struggled with was this being stagnant because I couldn't control anything because every single day something was changing. My gym got shut down, then group training got shut down, then 4 hours later, things would change before I could action them. So I was in a place of no control, can't take action. And what even am I trying to control right now? Am I controlling, is my business paused and I need to make money for me in the meantime? Or is my business about to go under? Am I going to lose my house? And is everything I've ever worked for going to change? And it was not having the certainty or control around that. And certainty is one of humans' 6 core needs. So this whole uncertainty and the inability to control things is probably one of the biggest things wreaking havoc on people.
So when we look at that, you talk about inability to control, and there's a lot that we can't control. But what are some core things that we can control, even in this current environment? I think this is, probably what I started to look at and why I've reached out to you.
Yeah. Because
a lot of what I've been doing, which I know is wrong, is within my control. So if we look at, from your perspective as an amateur athlete,
yeah.
What are the core things around staying fit that you control daily?
Personally, that I control daily. So I get up, I'm live streaming workouts, so it's great for me. It's easy for me, or per se. But even when I'm not, what I do is I hold the space. So I make sure that every single day, when I have a day off from training, from doing a live stream training session with my members at the gym or the paramedics, I come in and I do something. It might be mobility, it might be a walk, it might be some yoga, it might be some meditation. So holding the space and making sure that every single day there is a portion of the day that's set out for you, that is your training time or your body time or your mental health hour.
So, we've all got people at the moment that we know who, had someone say to me recently, it's great now, I don't have to get up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get to work. I get up at 8:15 and I'm at work at my desk by 8:30. So what we're seeing is, showering, a change to that personal hygiene routine, plus now sleeping longer, which as much as sleep's good, oversleeping can be an issue.
Yeah.
And then obviously getting back to the routine when this finishes becomes an issue for some people.
Yeah. I think people really need to implement a routine of some sort to hold the space, because when we all have to go back to work, I think the most frightening thing is, what if people aren't going to want to?
Mm-hmm.
They've all of a sudden they're sleeping into 8, they're going to be really disengaged with the whole process. And whereas if people can get up out of bed now, it might be a 10-minute walk around the block. Get up, get outside, get some sunlight, 10 minutes around the block, grab a coffee, come home, all of a sudden you feel like you're walking through your office door and you're at work. You need to find a trigger where you're at work.
So one of the things we can still control is the routine of our day. So we can actually, instead of going, well, the routine's gone now because these cues of, well, if I don't get up at this point in time and have my shower this time, I'll miss my bus or my train or whatever, they're gone.
Yeah.
But we can still set the alarm for the same time and put other things, as you said, hold that place through other things.
Yeah. And even myself with a real, the knowledge around this and my awareness is on it. It's funny because my housemate's been home from work. He was laid off as well. But they've just gone back a week on and a week off. And he went back for the first time on Monday this week. And I heard him get up. And when I got up out of bed, I still got up at the same time as I normally do. But there was this intention of let's go to work, because that routine was back, because and that's what I mean by the cues. There was this cue of Damon's up, he's having a shower, he's just gone, I've heard his car leave, he's gone to work, the working day started. So I was all of a sudden ready, and then I was like, oh, hang on, I don't have a working day. And that's the power of routine and habits. There will always be a cue. If you don't have, if you're trying to break a habit, you need to find the cue that is causing the habit. Now that might be, look at people maybe they've got some people that are saying, I'm drinking too much over this period and I want to cut back. Well, what's the cue? The cue is, it's 2 o'clock. I got it, right? So now you need a new 2 o'clock habit. Or maybe 2 o'clock you go for a walk around the block. That's your 2 o'clock habit. Then you come down and then the cue is satisfied. You've done something at 2 o'clock. You're going to come in, sit down, and you're probably going to feel like cracking a beer. You might still feel like it, but you might not. And I find that eating because I'm bored is a big one for me. And sometimes get up, go for a walk or do something for 5 minutes, sit back down, not at all hungry.
So diet, obviously something we can control. So what's your guilty pleasure, Tiff?
Oh, chocolate, as if you don't know.
I do.
Lots of chocolate.
And has there been an increase in that over this period of time?
There definitely well, sort of. I mean, it's always there, isn't it? But yeah, look, it definitely has, and I thought probably the main difference for me is it's now happening at breakfast time, whereas it used to happen later in the day. Same thing. And once you start, I find once you've done something 2 or 3 times at a time, that's where it takes hold, and I think people will find. So the first time you do something, not so easy. Second time, probably still not so easy. 3, 4, 5 times, it just gets easier because you're building. Willpower is like a muscle. You're building the muscle, and it becomes to the point where once you've done that enough times, it's harder not to do it than to do it, because you've got a cue that's accustomed to telling you to do this.
Yeah. Physical deconditioning. So we're active, we're healthy, we're moving around, and we stop.
Yeah.
How long does it take for the body to start losing the muscle memory and the muscle stamina that it's had? So just say, I don't know, I'm in manufacturing, and I'm constantly moving and I'm grabbing things off a belt, those sort of things.
Yep.
How long until the muscles that I've been using for 15 years or 10 years or 5 years decondition? So when I go back and do that, I'm actually going to struggle at it more than I
it's actually sadly happens quite quickly. Like you have a week off from something and you'll notice the difference, and it'll decline quite rapidly after that. So, and it doesn't mean you have to spend a lot of time working on that strength, but it's definitely something you want to be focusing on, doing something every few days strength-wise in order to not lose that conditioning of your muscles.
Because, look, working workers' compensation, we know that people who have been off work can't just go straight back to their full hours. So we do what's called a graduated return to work.
Yep.
Now, most people financially and most businesses from a production perspective won't be able to go, okay guys, let's all come back 2 days a week, 4 hours a day. That's not going to be realistic.
Yep.
So people in those physical roles, staying conditioned is going to be important?
Super important. Super important. Absolutely. And I think that's one of the things that worries me, what I see most happening at the moment is, and I think I mentioned to you before, driving down Beach Road to get here, how many people are out running, and just looking at them, we can tell that this is a new thing for them. So what people are doing, and it's great, right? Because people are out and they're like, well, I've got to stay fit, and that's fantastic in itself. But what is concerning is the things around that people don't understand. So one is the likelihood that they have just been sitting for 4 weeks at home, working from home like this on their terrible, poorly set up workstation, hunching their shoulders over, tightening their hip flexors, with no core strength. And then they're going to get up, and they've never ran before, and they're going to go for a 3, 4, 5K run, smashing their joints with poor form, no conditioning at all. And it's just a recipe for disaster in terms of looking at an injury that's going to come on. So the worst thing that happens is people start doing this. They might get hold of that cue, building a routine, right, which is great. So all of a sudden, every day they're running. Take note, I was that person before I started boxing. I got into running, and 3 months in, I did my knee, and then I did the other knee, and and my knees were an issue ever since, until I started doing functional training to start to build up the mobility, the flexibility, the strength, and everything around those muscles and joints, so that we can do that stuff.
So we talked before. I'm not as young as I'd like to think I was. So 47 this year. Jeez, I am getting old. At my age, obviously my body's been through a bit. Yeah. If I went back and started doing something high impact, what are the potential issues I'm going to see? Potential
issues are you may not have the core strength that you need in order to support yourself, to support your spine. So I see in people working desk jobs, like I said before, they often have rounded shoulders. They don't have much core strength, so lower back's always going to go. It's going to be a problem. And so training that, having good posture, good strength through the hips and the knees, so knee problems often come from the hips, and the hips will often tighten up, and you'll shorten your hip flexors from sitting all the time. So it's just, once you've got a weakness in the system and then you train on top of that, if you're not training correctly or you're not getting your body mobile first, then you're working again towards disaster. Yeah. You're heading down a pretty shitty path.
Right. So you've obviously been working in this area for a while, and you'll have people come in, or you'll talk to people about getting fit. And I can think of 3 excuses that people would probably come up with. What are the excuses that people come to you with why they can't train, why they can't
got no
get
time,
fit?
Too busy. Maybe they got kids, got no motivation, or injury.
Injury, yeah.
Can't do this because I'm injured.
Yeah. Equipment,
got no equipment,
yeah.
Got
and
no space.
Cost,
got no money.
Yep. Okay, so if we're looking at that now, we're in isolation. So pretty much if someone's commuting to work, and just say it's an hour commute each way,
yep.
They've now got 2 hours a day. If you talk about that place holding you talked about before,
yeah.
There's 2 hours a day that they now have that they didn't have before. So we can pretty much say the excuse of I don't have time can go out the window.
Yeah.
All right?
Yeah.
Equipment, I know 12 Rounds released something a couple of weeks ago on things you can use at home as weights.
Yeah.
So you can actually still keep exercising. And I know the exercises you're going to show us later on, we don't need any equipment for those
exactly.
as well.
Yep.
And cost. So if you're at home doing equipment exercises that don't involve weights, don't involve anything, and that we're going to give to you, people online, there's no cost.
Exactly.
So with all those things there, people will still have excuses.
Yeah.
And
I've got a theory, and when I've talked to corporates, I talk about it a lot because I find it really hits a nail on the head with corporates, and it will with most people. I often say, most people have a fitness goal. If you say, is there what are your goals? And if people are naming 3 goals, I've never heard anyone not mention fitness or weight loss as a goal. People always want to be better, faster, stronger, leaner, something that is physical. But often they never achieve their goal. And my question is always, so what are your values? What are your goals? What are your values? So you might have a goal of, I want to lose 10 kilos. What are your values? So if your values, which I know yours are, being an amazing dad, and if you haven't linked why losing 10 kilos will better you as a father, you will never achieve that goal, ever, because you'll always choose your son over that goal. But what if you realised that your son is watching you and you are embedding behaviours inside of him, and also that, perhaps you're travelling a road that's going to create disease, mental health issues, things like that again, they're going to affect your child. So once people start linking their goals to their values, and with corporates, it's always, they're always work, especially, like your CEOs or your really successful high-end corporates, they're always overworking. They work. I want to get better, I want to achieve more, I'll work harder, I'll work longer, I'll work more. And it has an adverse effect, right? Because they're not moving their body, when you move your body, you're moving your brain. You're allowing yourself to think clearly, be creative, get all those endorphins and all of the chemicals inside your brain that make you a high performer.
So it's funny, I think a lot of people, we saw a lot of the Instagram posts and Facebook posts at the start of this would be a great time to get fit and achieve goals, but I believe that that's probably not happening for a lot of people because they're missing some of the fundamentals. And we know we're sitting at home, if you're someone who's extroverted like me, you need people around you to get you energy, which I'm lacking. You start to lose that motivation. You start to, all those good intentions are, but I'll just sit down and watch TV for 5 minutes. 3 hours later, after watching 4 episodes of Elementary or whatever my wife and I are watching at the moment, the day's gone. Should people actually sit down, and you talked about the routine, and write down their routines for the day?
100%. And it's scientifically proven that people that write down goals or routines, write them down, and they execute them tenfold more times than the person who doesn't. If it's written on your schedule, you're going to do it. And I also think getting the support of the people around you. I know that my housemate's more of a, sit around and relax type person, whereas I'm get out and about and do things and always be doing something. But it's easy to get swayed into doing, if someone's there, then I just sit on the couch and the same thing you just said, next minute, it's 2 hours later. And you're like, I was going to do that, but I won't now. So I think just creating your own structure at home, your own timetable, and getting people on board to give you a nudge, leave you alone.
You talked before about how running's probably not great for a lot of people just to launch themselves into. What are the other forms of exercise that probably aren't great for people who haven't done a lot of exercise to date, or who have now gone 4, 6, 8 weeks without doing anything? What are the things they should avoid?
Anything that's going to impact the joints, basically. High intensity in terms of work rate is fine, but high intensity in terms of impact, you want to be careful. You don't want to be putting pressure on ligaments and straining joints and muscles and things. Anything that's going to launch you into an injury.
So I shouldn't go and get a home gym and try and bench press my personal best straight off the bat?
No. And you know what? If you're not used to weight training, there's a lot of people out there that are borrowing dumbbells and borrowing kettlebells from their gyms, and they've never done those exercises, and they might be Googling and watching live streams. If you don't know how to do the movements, it's I know you come in here
and
all
get in,
year.
and get in trouble.
And what's the one thing I harp on with you?
Correct technique.
Yeah. And it is the one thing with the vast majority of people who come in here, because obviously we have a lot of bodyweight stuff, but we're doing snatches and cleans and clean and press and kettlebell swings. And it's people's ability to hold their shoulders back and keep a straight spine. Because if you can't keep a straight spine, you're immediately putting pressure on the lower back, which is what I mentioned before.
And this, I guess, goes back to when we look at a lot of people working from home. You can have an ergonomic setup, but if you're not using it appropriately, so people starting to slouch down in the chair, not make sure things are the right height, and then, as I said, I think I told you that I'm now slouching in my chair, and then going and slouching even more on the couch when I finish. So that posture in everything we do, including sitting at a desk, becomes extremely important.
Yeah.
And if you're deconditioned and you decide you're going to do these great exercises, but you're doing them with poor posture and technique, you're probably going to lead to injury, not benefit.
Absolutely. And sort of similar when I first started boxing and a couple of years into boxing. So I remember my coaches used to always say, you've got great posture, but terrible for a boxer. So it was very upright. And then within 2 or 3 years, next minute I had a shoulder injury and I'd torn my shoulder. And when I told people I'd got the diagnosis, I had a torn shoulder, they're like, oh, no wonder, you're so rounded in the shoulders. I was like, no one will tell you. But the thing is, I was training at a whole different range of places, doing different things, but I didn't have the knowledge back then that everything I was doing was push and rounded, and we coach ourselves to be in this position. So we shorten all these muscles here, and then we're using our shoulders for different things in a position just like being on a computer that they shouldn't be. So, knowing what you're doing and how to counteract that and keep yourself aligned. Alignment is the key. If your body's going to fall into misalignment and then you go and load it, recipe for disaster, So now, and the funny thing was, with that injury, I started doing kickboxing because I could use more limbs and leave this one alone. And I remember Googling, how can I get better at this? And the first article came up and said, make sure you're doing rows and back exercises, otherwise you'll damage your shoulders. And I was like, wow, would have loved that information 3 years ago. So, it's just be aware of what you're doing. We're all sitting at home. I can't think of anything anyone would be doing at home right now that's going to open them up, and unless they deliberately go out and do it, do some yoga, I'll show you some great little stretches that just keep you aligned and open through the front line.